What are you drinking?
This is what we call conventional coffee.
I was going to ask you about this actually because you may remember Steve Ballmer, if you know who Steve Ballmer was on Microsoft.
Sure.
He was the CEO of Microsoft, and you know he famously, when the iPhone was released, he famously would go around if he saw anybody in the building with an iPhone at Microsoft, he would grab it off of them and throw it on the floor and stamp on it. And I was just going to ask you the same thing. If you ever catch anybody walking around with a Starbucks, are you that guy?
No, we're not that guy. I mean, we love coffee. You know, we talk about it all the time. We have material all around the office on coffee. We buy the best coffee in the world. We try every coffee there is out there. And to really understand what coffee is and to replicate it, we have to be consumers of it. We have to love it. We have to be experts in it. And so,
that's how it's got to be. Listen, I've started without even starting with the introduction. So let's do this introduction. So who are you? Who are you people?
We're Atomo.
We're a couple coffee lovers in Seattle. And so I'm Andy Kleitch, and this is Jarrett Stopforth, and we're the two co-founders of Atomo Coffee. And joking about Seattle, we are in the Pike Place market, and so we could practically throw a rock and hit the first Starbucks, shop here.
Metaphorically.
In Pike Place.
Yeah.
No, literally. Yeah.
You don't actually have a pile of rocks by the door.
Oh, well,
we didn't say
that. We ran out of supply. We have to go stock up again.
Fantastic. What is, let me ask you, for those that don't know, and I'm sure a lot of people do because you've been really all over the press, what does Atomo do?
Yeah, so we're building the world's first coffee without the coffee bean. And the way that we're doing that is we hacked the coffee bean, so to speak. You know, we understood it, we studied it, we understood what defines coffee, and then we replicated it, and doing so without coffee beans.
And why?
I was going to say why. Well, but there's more story behind it. I mean, let me give you a little bit more story behind it. Like Jarrett, 2 years ago we hooked up, and I said, what do you wish you were working on? And he says, well, I wish I was, recreating coffee and reinventing coffee and creating coffee without the bean. And I went to his garage. He's like a little mad scientist in his garage. And he's actually been researching all the different compounds that go into coffee and researching all these papers. And we started making some pretty bad coffee at the time, in his garage, taking all these different compounds and trying to recreate what coffee was. And so that's how we got started a couple years ago. And once we started playing around with that, we kind of had this aha moment where we said, this is actually tasting pretty good. I don't know if we'd say it was tasting pretty good.
No, we said this is coffee.
Wasn't that great, but
great coffee, it's not even good coffee.
And this was 2 years ago, right, in the garage. We didn't know if it was going to be possible to actually create coffee without the bean. That was really an unknown for us. And so once we got going on it, we determined this is actually possible. This is going to happen. And that's when we really doubled down our efforts and really began researching what it was going to take to make coffee.
So was it like a curiosity thing? Like, I wonder if we can do this? Or was there a purpose behind it initially?
There was a purpose, and the purpose grew and evolved, right? So when I first conceived of this, we drink a lot of coffee. Both Andy and I are coffee lovers, and we drink a lot of coffee, 6 to 8 cups a day. And I was drinking so much coffee, but I was starting to get really disappointed in it. Like, I'd have coffee from the same outfit on this corner, I'd go over, I'd have the same coffee an hour later on this corner, and they'd be completely different. And I thought to myself, there's got to be a way to do this consistently, to make great coffee consistently. And so I thought, well, what is the problem? Why is it so inconsistent? And we discovered, well, it's the bean. The magic is also the problem. And so, we started looking into it to find out what causes beans to be so inconsistent, coffee to be so inconsistent. So the first step was, can we consistently make great coffee? That's when Andy and I got together, and Andy was looking to do a startup that basically was better, right? Andy's been in entrepreneurship for 25 years, and he was looking for his next startup, speaking to all his friends who were working on things to find out what's a good fit for him. And that's when he spoke to me, and ironically, we met over coffee. And he just asked me, what do you wish you were working on full time? And I said, well, I want to make coffee without the coffee bean. And Andy's first thing was like, why? You're blowing my mind. I explained to him my desire. we got into the research, we started looking into it more, and that's when we started really unpacking how broken coffee is, how in trouble it is, both sustainably, environmentally, carbon footprint wise, labor, socioeconomic status, and we started looking at all of this and said, wow, there's some other reasons, right? Coffee may actually not be around forever. There's even a book by, what is it, McCook, whose Coffee is Not Forever, and it talks about all the issues, fungal rust, leaf rust, and all other issues. And so we said, well, there's a lot of good reasons, and it checked some boxes for Andy to be involved and sink his teeth into, because he wanted to do something that was better for mankind, better for the planet. And that's when we decided to team up together, lock arms, and take this journey.
I gotta be honest with you, I was not expecting that answer. And that was I was expecting you to say, we saw something and that led me to believe that this was possible. And then I started to work out the reasons why we should do it. Because oftentimes, there's the breakthroughs you see have all been, people say they've been built on the shoulders of other breakthroughs. So you normally see one technological advance that then makes another technological advance possible. And it's only when you see that thing that you realize that the next thing is you can do it. But what you did was actually say, I want to solve this problem out of the blue, right? It wasn't that you read some white paper about somebody decomposing or deconstructing a coffee bean and you went, that's really interesting. I can repurpose that data or that research. You started from a completely different place, which was, I want to solve this problem, but I've got no idea how. Let's just try to work that out. Is that right? Did I get that right?
Yeah, you kind of got it right. Yeah, we took this on to solve problems for ourselves, and then we discovered other problems that exist, and so we understood that there's a bigger journey and a bigger purpose to solve a problem for everyone else too.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Along that journey, we found out that people don't really like coffee. They like to drink coffee, but 7 out of 10.
How dare you, sir? How dare you?
Well, 7 out of 10 are putting milk and sugar in their coffee, so they don't really like it. They like the milk and the sugar and the caffeine.
That's true. That's true. A lot of people don't actually. The funny thing is, a lot of people put the milk and sugar in, but don't realize it's because they don't like the coffee that much. They think that's just
that's
how
right. That's exactly what we discovered. It's exactly what we discovered.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like if you go to Morocco, you can't have the mint tea there without an abundance of sugar, and because actually it's quite bitter. But okay, great. Well, that's fantastic. I have to now ask, because I seen on your website that there's a couple of different coffees, and Max on our podcast we were talking about Atomo as a story, and I wanted to cover it and talk to him because he's a scientist, and we weren't sure whether you had actually launched only cold brew, because you have launched, right? Are you commercially available?
Not yet.
No.
Okay. So you're at like in an alpha state of like pilot testing the coffees on different people. So you stop people in the street and you give them coffee and you say, drink this.
That's right. Right. We don't sell coffee. We just give it away for free. That's
yeah. So you've manufactured cold brew, but I thought I seen also espresso in there somewhere. Where are you at in your development cycle?
Well, currently we are working on a cold brew, right? As we went through this entire process, we made a coffee one day. It was heated and we drank it hot and we said, this is really good coffee, but put it in the fridge because we wanted a reference standard to come back to. Tried it the next morning, tried it cold, and thought to ourselves, wow, this really shines up when it's cold. And that led us, we always had this theory, let the technology lead us. And so we basically decided then that we would launch with cold brew in either a draft nitro or in can or both, because that is something that we've made that's great right now. In order to make those, we have a grounds component that we extract, as you do with conventional coffee, right? So we have grounds figured out. We haven't finalized grounds in a consumer form factor, as we're working still on that great aroma that you get from it to elevate that. And so we haven't finalized that. So since we can work through the extraction and make the coffee, we're going to launch the RTD, either the ready to drink cold brew or the draft. Grounds will follow next, either in the form of a pod or grounds, and it'll be at that point either or could launch, and then eventually we'll end up extruding or 3D printing a bean for those who want to grind and make their own espresso. So
You're
we'll
going
cover
to 3D print the beans. Isn't that kind of an expensive? Because 3D printing is I'm out of touch with it a little bit. But the last time I looked at 3D printers, 3D printing for the mass market was still not commercially viable.
Yeah, it's making great gains. I mean, we don't have to. We could extrude it. There's many different ways that we could make a bean. That is just
Right.
one of the things on our horizon. But by the time that we're doing it, I imagine it will be really well set.
I've gone off topic already, but I've just got to drill down onto this because it's so interesting. You're going to 3D print the bean. I'm putting on my canny face here. You're going to 3D print the bean because it'll look like a bean, right?
Well, it will look like a bean. It is a bean. It is our bean. It is not your conventional coffee bean. It is the Atomo bean. It's the molecular bean.
Right.
And the point is that we don't want to change up the consumer's habits at all. If you drink cold brew out of a can today, we'll give it to you that way. If you drink cold brew on draft, we'll give it to you that way. If you drink pod coffee, we'll give it to you that way. If you like drip, we'll give it to you that way. If you like to grind and tinker and toy, we'll give it to you that way. But we'll cover coffee.
Right.
Yeah, I think early on we discovered and we made a commitment that we didn't want to change the ritual. Yeah, we didn't want to change the ritual. And that consumers Yeah, right. And consumers have a ritual and they want that to be part of their daily routine. And so we said we just have to meet the customer where they are. We have to provide a coffee that they can use in their own experience every day. And just to kind of go back and talk a little bit more about what Jarrett was mentioning, we create coffee here every day. And what a lot of people don't understand what we do is that we take these upcycled materials, right? So stems, leaves, pits, things that are actually a side stream from the,
ag industry.
Yeah, from the commercial ag industry. These are things that are typically thrown away. And through Jarrett's analysis on all the molecular compounds in those ingredients, we've been able to find ways, and this is where our intellectual property comes into play, we've been able to find ways to alter and enhance those compounds in those ingredients and use them in our brew. And what our brew looks like is it looks like a ground coffee. When we look at our ground material, it looks like ground coffee. And then we use that material every day to extract our coffee and to create grounds. And so what we're really talking about here, a lot of people think we're bleeping and blooping together atoms and creating some molecular, brew that is just a
bunch of chemistry.
Yeah, a bunch of chemicals in a cup. That's actually not it at all. We're actually taking, these organic materials and elevating the compounds in them through our tricks here to elevate those compounds that we're looking for.
Right. So, okay. So we're getting to the heart of the matter here in terms of you're taking, so the great words, upcycled, but you're taking a waste product from the agricultural industry. Okay. Can we say what waste product it is? Is it corn? Is it what is it?
Yeah, we're not giving the specifics of it away, but if you think, the way to think about that is if you can think of all the primary ag industries that are out there, just think about California in and of itself, the amount of fruit and vegetable production there, think, outer leaves of lettuce and roots of certain plants and stems and husks and pips, the pulping industry, watermelon pulping leaves seeds behind. I mean, there's a lot that is left behind at the end of the day that either makes it to, animal feed, cheap animal feed, or just makes it to landfill. And we're looking at those and we're saying, these are valuable. They have precursor compounds that we match through a screening process we have as part of our IP here that can be converted into the compounds that are exactly equivalent to that found in conventional coffee. So we are selecting these upcycled materials, right? So in essence, waste streams that we call side streams from the ag industry, and we are adding value to them by putting them through our biochemical and thermal reaction processes to just convert them into the compounds of interest. There's some key compounds for coffee. We convert them into those compounds, extract them from a ground material, and generate a liquid, which is coffee.
See, what blows my
and
mind is
sensorially and analytically.
what blows my mind is that you're able to take agricultural waste and find the same compounds that make coffee in an
Yes.
agricultural waste.
Well, yeah. Well, and we're using our IP to convert them into that, right? So
I understand. So, but they're in there.
They're in there in a format, in some format that needs conversion.
But is it really that hard to believe? I mean, like coffee cherry, the bean is the pit of a coffee cherry, and there are plenty of other fruits and vegetables out there that have pits that have,
That are very similar.
Yeah, same makeup.
So very similar, doing the same thing, providing food to grow the fruit. And so if you just think about it, the bean is a pit of a plant. And we have looked through roots and stems and leaves and pips that have the same sort of makeup and converted them.
Fantastic. So, is this going to be something that other countries will be able to do? So I guess this is kind of a business model, but also an environmental question. So let's say I'm Japan, right? And you want to sell Atomo coffee in Japan. Would you go about that by using American agricultural waste and then sending the final product over there? Or does it make sense to be able to take agricultural waste in Japan and set up a manufacturing plant in Japan?
There's a bit of both of that, right? So depending on the types of ag and the type of side streams that are in that country and the quantity thereof, right, would determine whether we could actually set up an outfit in a country and produce all of their demand, if that were the case. And if there's not a match for that, then yes, there would be the need to bring in some of the material from another country that has an abundance of the key, I would say, materials that we would need to react in order to generate conventional coffee taste.
Right.
Yeah, so I think it's possible. When you look ahead, our formula is continually evolving, and so the ingredients that we used 2 years ago are a lot different than the ingredients we use today, as our technology improves. And so, right now we know that there's, out of our top ingredients, there's different places around the world where those ingredients are grown. And so we know that there's a wide abundance of these ingredients. But we know that our formula is going to continually evolve as well. And as our techniques get better, we're going to be able to make, coffee from a wider variety of ingredients.
Right. And when you say coffee, so what we're doing is you're taking these ingredients, you're getting something that on its own, without any added flavors, there's no little tricks, no little, little slips and things in there where you say, well, just add this little coffee essence in there. You actually get something that tastes of coffee. I have to ask, right? So you get something that tastes of coffee that doesn't have any flavoring or anything attached to it. It's just all the natural ingredients that you process result in something that tastes of coffee, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
I
just want to build on that. I've been in this industry for about 25 years, and I've worked on a lot of different projects making coffee flavored beverages and coffee flavored supplements and so forth. And I can tell you, there is nothing that you can get out of a flavor house that will give you a coffee experience. It may hint at coffee, but you will always know that it's a flavor. You will always know that it's created, because it simply cannot capture the complexity of the number of compounds that you would have to generate. We tried this trick. We ordered chemicals that we basically mapped what defines coffee, 28 to 29 key compounds. We took them in and of themselves, pure chemicals, added them together, mixed them in ratios, mapped them out. Does not taste like coffee. And the reason being is you can't simply do that. Coffee is not the sum of its parts. There is magic that happens in the bean. There is bioreaction, thermal transformation that happens inside the bean that gives you this entourage effect of flavor. And without doing that, that is when we discovered what we needed to do for our IP, when we realized that coffee is not the sum of its parts, and that we have to basically replicate the reactions occurring in that magical little incubator of a bean ex vivo.
Yeah. The depth and complexity of coffee is a lot more than just the top 28 compounds that you would get, you know, that you can identify. And so that's what we really realized, was by reacting materials that you get this depth and complexity that you just can't, that you can discern easily when you put your face over a cup of coffee and you get that aroma bomb. And when you try coffee and it coats your entire mouth and it has that body, there's just certain compounds in coffee that require complexity.
And that's only talking about flavor and aroma. That's not even talking about mouthfeel and color and bioactives.
Yeah. Color.
So you can take a bunch of flavors and you'll get a hint of coffee. You won't get the coffee experience, the mouth coating, the delivery, the little bit of bitterness that comes with it. But you know, the overall effect is felt by all of those different factors.
And in fact, that's what makes, if you're into coffee, that's what makes the whole thing enjoyable. And that's why a lot of us will spend quite so much time drinking so many espressos, making it. I don't know if you saw it, there's some little meme video going around just this last week about this guy making the perfect espresso. And he's there getting more and more wired up as he goes, I can do this better, I can do this better. And he's always making one more. And actually, that was me. I tell you, I'm that guy in the morning. And it's actually, I had to cut back the number of coffees I was drinking. And when I used to have a cafe, and I'd go to the cafe in the morning, and I spend ages dialing in the espresso, but I'd never spit it out. I'd always drink the damn thing. So I'd be 5 shots in before I'd even had a coffee, just getting the machine tuned up. And but for me, all of those factors made it really important. You're absolutely right. It's not just taste. For me personally, texture and mouthfeel is super important. So we've talked about the brewing methods, and that was going to be something I was going to ask you about, was whether it was for one specific brewing method, but you're going to cover the spectrum of different brewing methods. That's correct, right? You're going to be coming out first of all with a cold brew, but then you're going to be slowly developing out into different brewing methods. Or are you going to start with one?
Pods and grounds, beans.
Personally, I think pods are going to be huge over the next few years. It's not my thing, but I think as we're all working from home a lot more now, that a lot of people are going to want espresso, but they're not going to want to get into espresso in the same way that those people like myself are really into it. But they will want to have some kind of espresso experience. They'll want something better than the coffee they can have. And a capsule machine can be a lot cheaper than an espresso machine, a lot easier to produce. So I actually think capsules are going to make a big impact. And I know other companies are investing heavily in capsule manufacturing. So I think that would be a smart route. So
the compost capsule would fit our mission, right? That's the problem.
Compostable or biodegradable or readily biodegradable. And be in line with our values.
Right. So you don't think much about the aluminium recycling route?
It's I wouldn't say it's not that we don't think so much about it. It's how much of it is truly recyclable and how much is actually recycled, right?
Yeah,
so
that's the problem, right?
There's components within aluminum pods that do not get recycled, and the amount that actually ever make it into recycling is probably not that high.
Yeah, you're probably right. I wanted to ask, Max made me ask this question. So he wanted to know whether you're going to get into soluble coffees and whether you're going to aim for the high volume sort of Nescafe jar coffee experience. Is that going to be something you focus on?
Yes, and we could do that relatively fast. If that were for us an important target, we could do that prior to even launching a pod or a ground. That could be a really great journey for us. But I think we'll evaluate how the market looks and where our props are there.
Yeah, I mean, I think just take a look at us as a company. We're a small company. We have a limited manufacturing capability right now, and we know we can make really great coffee. So we really want to enter the market with a kind of third wave, premium, high-end coffee product, right? Because we can create that product, and we have a limited capability of manufacturing right now. So we're not going to race to the bottom and try to kind of come out with a soluble, coffee, because we don't have to do that right now. We really want to show people that molecular coffee that we make can be even better than conventional coffee. And so for us, it's about coming out with that high-end premium product. And as our manufacturing capabilities increase over the years, we'll start enabling, these kind of what I would call sensorially less, premium experience. But still, we actually think that our instantized coffee is pretty darn good right now. Like, in other words, what we've learned is that a lot of conventional coffee takes a hit when you retort it, or when you put it through some kind of drying method to make it soluble. So what we've been able to do is engineer our coffee to go through those experiences better, to come out better on the other end. So when coffee usually gets retorted into a can, it takes a pretty big hit, and it can taste pretty awful. But we know that actually by adjusting our formula before the retort process, we can actually make it taste better out of retort. And so we actually think there's a lot of, so decaf coffee, great example. A lot of decaf coffee is not that great. It takes a pretty big hit through that process. So we should be able to, create a better cup of decaf that is engineered to taste better.
Let's talk about, it's funny you say that, because we did an episode on decaf coffee, and I had a very negative predisposition going into it. But I actually had some really good decaf recently. And then I sort of totally changed my position on decaf and went on the podcast and said, I hadn't had decaf in years. I've suddenly had it. I've been missing out. It's actually really great. I can go back to drinking lots of coffee again. And then every coffee I've had after that, every decaf I've ordered from different roasters after that's been pretty bad. So I think it does vary tremendously. Listen, I wanted to ask you, I've really got to ask this question on the varieties, because obviously one of the great interest factors that keeps people constantly buying different coffees and interested in the industry is the fact that there's so much choice out there, and each choice brings with it a different flavor profile, different body, everything else. I can go, and I'm drinking right now coffee from Rwanda, which is very different from the, I can't even remember I had last week, Ugandan, I think maybe, or an Ethiopian. So I can go to these different regions and get different varieties of coffee beans that are obviously then different, roasted by different people and processed in different ways, and then I can make them in different ways. So I've got this almost infinite variety available to me. What you said earlier on in this podcast about quality and consistency, I totally get. And my very first job was as a quality administrator, and almost the first thing I was told is, you can't have quality without consistency. You can't have inconsistent quality, right? So I totally get that. But how are you going to address, or do you care? Or are you going to say, that's fine, that world can exist, but we're going to do these 3 things, these 5 things? How are you going to approach that particular issue?
Yeah. Well, so let's put it this way. We've had a lot of big coffee companies come to us already. You can imagine, without naming names, I can pretty much say almost every major coffee company in the world has reached out to us and said, what are you guys doing and when can we try it? And because I think we all understand that we have the ability to pull the levers, to turn the dials. And like the things that you like about an Ethiopian might be the acidity, the blueberry notes that are coming out, so we actually have the ability to customize our formula and to target exactly what attributes you're getting out of that Ethiopian coffee. So is there a world where one day Atomo could be creating a special blend for Starbucks or for Dunkin' Donuts or for Nescafe or for other coffee companies to match exactly what their formulas, what notes those formulas have? Absolutely, we could be focusing on that. And I think what's been one of the major kind of philosophical questions that we've had here is, what coffee should we target? As like our first cup of coffee that comes out of the gate. because everyone has a preferred cup of coffee, and no one can agree on it.
Right.
So some people like the French roast, and some people like these very light or natural coffees. So it's been a really interesting conversation we've had over the couple of years now of what is the perfect cup of coffee. And so we've really made a decision here that one of the things that we do that's quite unique is that we can create a less bitter cup of coffee that has all those coffee notes and attributes, roasty, toasty, things that people really appreciate in coffee, but without that bitter hint. So that's one of the very first coffees we're going to be coming out with, is an ultra smooth cup of coffee. But to answer your question, we absolutely can target varietals and regions.
Right. And building on that, back to the preceding question around decaf, or at least the discussion around decaf. I mean, we'll make the world's first true no-caf coffee. I mean, in all decafs, there's some degree of caffeine that remains. And we've discussed, making coffee for pregnant women, because that's a thing.
Or for nighttime
it is definitely
coffee.
a thing. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question I'm going to ask, and you're okay to take the fifth. Is it the fifth? You can plead the fifth on this one.
The fifth.
You can plead the fifth if it's commercially sensitive. But if I was the CEO of a business that can make any kind of coffee, I can make that Ethiopian, I can do this, I would be asking the question whether I can patent that algorithm, patent that flavor almost, which would make your company more valuable, but potentially also, kill any competition. I don't know. What am I trying to say here? I don't know. I don't know whether it would be a good or a bad thing, but I would be tempted to do it because my job is to make the most valuable company I could. But potentially you'd be excluding everybody else from doing the same thing. I'm just wondering whether that's, have you struggled with, we talked about philosophical questions. Have you thought about that?
Yeah.
Actually, I mean, we've had a different discussion, but yeah, not that particular point.
Right. I mean, it's a pretty great idea that you have there. You know what I mean? Like, could you just say...
No, wait. You're not going to land that one on me.
It's the molecular fingerprint.
Hey, this is what Nick said.
Patent that sucker, right? Exactly. No one can do it. I mean, that's, I think that hasn't been our approach, right? Our approach has been more of what are the unique techniques and tools and processes that we use to generate the compounds to create these amazing flavors and aromas, body, mouthfeel, color. And so that's how we're really approaching it. Do we think we can kind of patent Ethiopian coffee? That hasn't been our approach. That hasn't been how we approach this problem.
Great. What do you think, moving on to the environmental aspect of it, because I know this is something that you've talked about, and there's two arguments to this, two sides to this argument, right? On the one hand, everybody knows in the industry that the coffee industry is in trouble. It's not just the environment, it's actually pretty much all the way through the value chain. It's a difficult one to fix. Some people think it can be fixed simply. You just charge more for a cup of coffee, right? And then the farmer gets paid more. But it just doesn't work like that. The futures market doesn't work like that. Logistics doesn't work like that. Farmers' ability to adopt new technologies and things. There's so many variables in the supply chain that there isn't a simple answer. Now, I know that Olam came up with a sustainability framework, which was about the nearest thing to being sensible that I saw in terms of trying to build sustainability into the financial stability into the value chain. But equally, World Coffee Research is out there doing research into trying to make better strains of coffee plant that are going to be more durable, maybe have a high yield, etc. And all of this together will contribute to hopefully ameliorating the problem. But you guys are, I think, what's the word they use? A black swan. You know what I mean? Have you heard of that term?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you're the black swan that comes in that no one expects. That says, you don't even need the bean, And what are you? Wait, what? Who are you? Where? And and so for the people who are consuming the coffee, this is great news. Potentially I can have a machine. I get my coffee. I don't have to worry about the environment. I don't have to worry about global warming. I don't have to worry about coffee leaf rust. I just get my coffee in the morning, and that's amazing. The other side of the argument is that if you were to suddenly launch tomorrow at massive scale and just say, this is available for everybody, it's going to be in every shop. Starbucks is going to do it. Your local supermarkets got it. You can buy it on the corner shop. We're everywhere. If that was to suddenly happen overnight, I wonder what would happen to the industry. I wonder what happened to all the people whose livelihoods are depending on it. And so this is an unfair question, right? Because it's not your responsibility to worry. It's your responsibility to innovate. And this is the way it's always been. And if innovation happens over a period of time, everyone adapts. It's the same way. You must have heard of the word Luddite. And the word Luddite, which generally means somebody who's just not really with it in technology, came around when the Luddites actually protested against the introduction of looms in I think it was in a manufacturing plant in Manchester or Birmingham or somewhere. This guy had looms, and all the people who used to do the weaving were like, this is crazy. You can't put machines in to do our job. We'll be all out of a job. And they thought it was the end of the world. And of course, we all moved on now, and none of us would think about doing that. But what's your take on it? So you can the arguments for the environment are self-evident, clear.
Yep.
But how do you see this playing out? And how do you see your role fitting in and integrating with all the things I just mentioned?
There's so many ways to answer this question. I think that the first thing that we start with is that consumers want to make better choices, in the world today. In fact, I think where you would say 20 years ago, did I think that much about sustainability and that much about the environment as I went about my daily life and as I was making my purchase decisions? And 20 years ago, the answer was no, I really didn't think that much about it. But today's consumers take the environment into consideration when they make purchase decisions and as they evaluate what they're buying. And they evaluate their impact on the world. And so one of the things and we do that every day. So one of the things we're trying to do is make it possible for consumers to make better choices, right? So as consumers are going about their day, we want to enable them to make a better choice that's more sustainable, that's better for the planet every day. So that's top number one. Number two is coffee farmers. There's been a lot of research on how many or what percentage of coffee plantations will have to be moved over the next 30 years. And the latest stat says that half of all coffee plantations will have to be moved over the next 30 years. So as climate change continues to, wreak havoc on these areas where coffee is grown, coffee farmers are doing what's called up farming. And they're going further up the hill. So they clear the forest up the hill and they move their plantations further up the hill to a climate that's more suitable for growing coffee. And so what we're trying to say, just as a whole, is keep growing coffee where you can. Absolutely. We don't want to stop coffee farmers from making a living and having a great business, and we love coffee. But what we would like to see is that coffee farmers do not cause further deforestation, that they do not go further up the hill, that they do not continually wipe out this, what's left of the rainforest for this monoculture crop to go further up the hill. So what we would love to see is that coffee farmers, instead of making that choice of growing coffee further up the hill, we'd like to see them make a choice of grow something that's more sustainable for their, plot of land that they have. And so this really isn't, and we work with farmers. We actually love farmers. We work with farmers every day. So farmers are supplying us with their side streams, right? So we work with farmers. We help farmers get more value from their crops. And so for us, we work with farmers in California, in other areas around here in the United States right now. And so we're helping farmers make a better living and make more money. We don't have the chance to work with coffee farmers because we simply don't use any of the product that coffee farmers generate today. But I think a lot of what the consumers feel about coffee farmers is they have this vision in their mind of this romantic coffee farmer that's making this living wage and that has this great environment around them, when it's not. It
seems
the
romantic.
Reality is
coffee farmer seems romantic, and it's not.
The reality is really the opposite. You
No,
know,
they have a very poor lot in life. There's a charity that we support with a guy. Funny enough, the first interview that I did on this channel was for a guy that goes out and helps build houses for coffee farmers in Honduras because they don't have proper housing. They just don't even
Right.
have a roof over their heads.
right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there's Coffee Land. I'm not sure if you've read that book.
I bought it. I haven't read it yet. It's on the shelf with about 12 other books that I've got to read.
Yeah. Get the audiobook. The audiobook is it's easier on that one.
I do listen to audiobooks. I've stopped listening to factual books on audio because I find that I find it easier to flick backwards and forwards and highlight things. I'm trying to memorize something. So I have audiobooks for all the stupid narration books or the sort of the comedy things that I listen to. But no, for factual books, I liked it. I'm still old school, Andy.
You have a highlighter and you underline things and you go back and forth. Well, that's great. That's perfect. I mean, Coffee Land reads like a story, though, in many ways. It's the story of really how natives in these countries were, displaced, and how the only option they had left, once their land was taken away and converted to coffee plantations, the only option they had left was to go work at the coffee plantations to actually get fed,
Right.
2 squares a day. And so this was, and it wasn't even, it was, beans and tortillas, and that's what you get paid. And if you show up and work all day long, we'll give you 2 meals and, and a few pennies. And so it's kind of this whole, it's a sad story, but it does make you wonder, how much we don't really consider what goes into our cup of coffee every day. I'd say there's different industries where we look at it very objectively, but we really don't look at coffee and think objectively about what went into making that cup of coffee.
That's very true. In fact, to be honest with you, that's very true of all the industries. Everything that we consume, unfortunately, is the same way. If you put it under a microscope, you'll find that from the clothes that we wear to the chocolate bars that we eat, somewhere,
For sure.
Someone is having a very hard time producing that, generally speaking. And the answers aren't so simple. Okay, you're absolutely right. Although I'm a little bit disappointed you didn't hold up like an iPad with one of our stories on there, Jared. So you get
Writing was too complex.
you get 5 out of 10. All right, for trying. But that's absolutely right. I'm just gonna, as a plug here, I'm gonna say that we, as a good little good news story, the other thing you can say on this is that most chocolate farmers, cocoa farmers, have never even tasted chocolate. And I put out a thing. It's crazy, right? You think about it. It's like saying a coffee farmer has never tasted coffee. Most cocoa farmers have never tasted chocolate, have no idea what it tastes like. So I put out a thing in our newsletter a couple of weeks ago, and I said, I want to get chocolate bars for free into the hands of some farmers to feed them, so they know what the hell they're producing. And I'll give away some free advertising if anybody wants to sponsor this on the site. And we got taken up actually by a company in Cote d'Ivoire, which is actually where I bet you that article refers to. And there's a company called Microfertile in Cote d'Ivoire who's now sending hundreds of chocolate bars to Liberia to go into the hands of children over there who work on cocoa farms. So, but yeah, there's taking this back on to coffee. Sorry about for the aside there, but you very quickly realize when you look into an industry, any industry, and I'm sure this is the case, that there's I'm not saying a cost to it. I don't want to make it. We shouldn't feel guilty for our consumption, but that we should appreciate it. There's a level of appreciation that should go in there, and I think we should go into it with our eyes open, and know what we're consuming as much as it's possible. Know what we're consuming and make conscious choices, because that's just a humane thing to do. We're lucky to be where we are through being born in America or born in the UK, and we shouldn't take that for granted. I have 2 more questions, and I'm going to let you guys go. Okay, how do you think the organizations, the coffee organizations, like the Specialty Coffee of America. How do you think they view you? Do they view you as a threat or as a partner?
Well, I think it's to be determined. I would say that, it's when we first launched, we thought that the coffee industry as a whole would probably want to string us up on, and whatever they do to witches in Massachusetts, so we kind of thought like we would probably be the bad guys, just not knowing how the coffee industry would reply and respond. And the opposite actually happened. We were approached by world champion baristas. We were approached by coffee shops all around the world. Literally, we've had coffee shops everywhere from the Philippines to Singapore to Ireland to Central America, South America. We've had distributors reach out to us from all around the world, and coffee companies. And so, I think here's something that we're beginning to understand, is that there's consumers all around the world that want to make better choices in how they consume products today. And the coffee industry knows that. And so they are trying to solve that need, and they're trying to deliver products to consumers that consumers want to purchase that are better for the environment. So, and that group of people isn't just millennials or the Zoom generation, the Zoomers. It's actually across every single segment of the population. There are a group in each segment that want to make better choices. So the coffee consumers are no different, and they are those people. So I think what we've seen is that we've even had like coffee traders call us, and like people that their life is around trading coffee. They've called us and want to get it. They want to know how can they participate in this movement. And so that's been really it's been
Coffee
really
traders
positive.
are not dumb people. Commodity traders, anybody on those financial markets, they're not there because they're stupid. They'll want to be ahead of the curve here, and they want to know how they can make some money out of the good things you guys are doing. Not in a bad way. That's just how it is. So I'm not surprised by that at all. And so I've got to ask, leading on to that. So traders and futures, what a great segue. What does the future hold for you guys? Where are you going to be 1 year, 2 year, 3 years? What's the vision?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, it takes a long time to build coffee factories. So this is what we've learned. You know what I mean? Like
I didn't know that.
So, well, because these are new factories that have never been built before. So what so Jarrett and his team of scientists out here, they have been building coffee at what we call the bench top, right? This is in the laboratory, and we built it at a very small scale. And so what we just did is we just raised $9 million to go build our first pilot facility. And this is the next stage in production, where you take what you've learned at the benchtop and you scale it to a production level, where instead of making 50 cups of coffee a day, you can make thousands of cups of coffee a day. And what we learned is that in order for us to make our coffee at production, it takes a little bit of a mix of what you would find in a coffee roastery, what you would find in a brewery, what you would find in other manufacturing industries. And in fact, you can't just take a coffee manufacturing line and make our coffee. You can't take a brewery and make our coffee. You have to take all these different industries and kind of bring them together in a way that hasn't been done before. So for us to scale our coffee means that we have to build our own manufacturing facility where we create our secret sauce, where we create our grounds. So that's one of the challenges of scaling our business, but it's also a great differentiator for us. And it means that it's a little bit more difficult for other,
I was about to say it's a barrier to entry for the next person coming in, right?
Yeah. So, for our growth right now, it's about building a great tasting cup of coffee, understanding how to scale that, building our manufacturing facilities to do that, and then proving that the consumers enjoy it and they want to buy more of it. And then we'll go out and build a bigger factory and a bigger factory, and then, go from there. So that's the stage we're at right now. Yeah.
When are we going to be able to buy it?
So at the middle of next year is when we're going to have it available for purchase. And we'll be doing, limited runs initially, right? Because kind of like Impossible, how when they first launched, they just had it available at select locations. We'll have it available at some select locations and direct to consumer on our website. And so, but because we will have limited supply, not everyone will be able to buy it initially. So we'll do our best. We'll send some your way though.
It'll be in the
Yeah.
US to begin with, I imagine. You'll launch out in the US only. It's limited.
Yeah, we'll launch in the U.S. Yeah, it'll be with a handful of retailers and through our direct-to-consumer website.
Okay. Are you going to promise to send me some? Because I want to.
Yes,
I want to be.
absolutely.
I want to be one of the. I want to be one of the in crowd. You know, I want to be able to review that.
Yeah, as long as you do a blind taste test of a cold brew and next to ours, like take your conventional cold brew, because this is what we love to do here in our in our facility here, is we'll line up 3 or 4 cold brews, and watch people as they drink them, and they'll tell us which one they like, and
Yeah.
I think you'd be really surprised what you would consider as acceptable cold brew when you put it next to other cold brews. It's quite alarming what people are drinking on a daily basis.
Crazy.
Fantastic. I can tell you honestly, it's been such a pleasure. You guys have been absolutely fantastic, and thank you for taking time out. I know how busy you are. You've got your day ahead of you. My day's finished over here. So I'll let you guys go.
It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Awesome.
Thanks
Thanks,
for
Rick.
reaching out, and absolutely we will send you coffee. We want to see the result. We want to see the smile on your face.
I've got you on
So,
camera saying it. You can't welch on that deal now.
coming your way.
Sending you a
Thanks
big
very
A.
much, guys.
Yeah. All right.
You got it.
Thanks,
Nick.
man. See you.
Thanks, man.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.